Hello everybody, thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. In 1095, Pope Urban II preached the First Crusade. He left Italy to tour France, where he started to spread his message far and wide. Famously, at Clermont, Urban preached powerfully to the French people. But what exactly did he want from the Christians of Europe? Well, in a letter written to the people of neighbouring Flanders, Urban made it perfectly clear. He tells of the trials and tribulations of Christians in the East, from messages of woe that had been sent to him from the Eastern Roman Emperor Alexius I Komnenos. Urban tells of churches being destroyed by the Seljuk Turks, and, even more disastrously for Christianity, that Jerusalem had been seized and must be retaken. Urban made it plain in his sermons that what he asked for was no easy undertaking. He told his listeners, "Brothers, you must suffer many things in the name of Christ: wretchedness, poverty, nakedness, persecution, need, sickness, hunger, thirst, and other things of this kind." So the Pope was making no pretences of what lay ahead of his would-be Holy Army, but he told them that the spiritual benefits of reclaiming Jerusalem far outweighed any temporal suffering. Urban's words had the desired effect. The men of Clermont, on hearing these sermons, began to stitch crosses to themselves, which were made out of any material that was available to them, and they almost immediately began to make preparations for the long expedition ahead of them. One man, by the name of Bohemond of Taranto, was busy laying siege to Amalfi in Italy when he got word of the crusading fever that was beginning to sweep across Europe. He began to make inquiries as to what was happening. When he learned that this was very much a serious expedition, he left the siege and returned home to prepare for his own journey to the east. Bohemond would be one of the leading figures on the Crusade. Another prominent figure in 11th century Europe to heed the call from Urban and Alexius was Robert, Duke of Normandy. He was the oldest son of William the Conqueror and brother of William II of England. To help finance his own expedition, Robert effectively handed over his duchy to William in return for payment. This did not go down too well in England, as the king imposed a heavy tax to pay for this transaction. Not only would the journey prove a long one for the Crusaders, but it would also prove to be riddled with dangers for both them and communities of innocent people, including, most notoriously of all, Jewish men, women and children who felt the full force of rabid and vitriolic anti-Semitism as crusading fever began to sweep the continent. More on that in a moment. Hugh, brother of King Philip I of France, also made the journey. He led his forces through Bulgaria, but with no due care. The army marched in a spread-out formation rather than as a tight unit, and left themselves vulnerable to hostile enemies lying in wait. And so it proved. Count Hugh was taken prisoner before eventually being taken to Alexius at Constantinople. Also among the men to follow was a certain Godfrey of Bouillon, who'd become the leading light on the Crusade. Alongside Robert, Duke of Normandy, was Stephen of Blois, whose son, of the same name, would become King of England in 1135. Counts, dukes, nobles of all kinds, men and women, rich and poor, set out on this expedition. But how righteous was it? Undoubtedly many, if not all the Crusaders, genuinely believed in their divine mission to free their Christian brothers and sisters in the East from Seljuk oppression and to liberate the holiest of cities, Jerusalem. But it would be naive to think that with all the dangers that lay before them, including long travel, enemy attacks, alien conditions, extreme climates, and periods of want and hunger, that there was no thought of enrichment on a practical level as well. However justified or otherwise one may consider the concept of the Crusade, what is in no doubt is some of the hideous cruelty that took place. Pope Urban was not the only voice who held sway over a great many people. A preacher named Peter the Hermit also roused Christians to take up the cross alongside him. But unfortunately, Peter seems to have attracted the worst type of character. The most damning aspect of the People's Crusade, led by Peter, had taken place in Europe with the hideous treatment of innocent communities of Jewish people, young and old alike. The first attack had been carried out in Cologne against a small band of Jews. Some were beheaded, others suffered terrible injuries, homes and synagogues were burned to the ground. On seeing this, other Jews tried to flee and were massacred. The disgraceful scenes spread. In mines, some tried to hide with the bishop there, but were discovered and slaughtered. The elderly, pregnant women, nobody was safe from the rabble. To spare them any further suffering, parents killed children and then themselves. But as the crusade went on, Peter's forces continued to develop into nothing more than a rabble and a mob. His forces stole, plundered, and murdered indiscriminately. Anna Komnena, daughter of the Emperor Alexius, considered the first female historian and author of the Alexiad, the biography of Alexius, refers to Peter as the Cuckoo, and it's not hard to see why. His crusade, known as the People's Crusade as I've just mentioned, eventually descended into chaos. Leaders of Peter's army soon argued amongst each other until eventually the Turks had put them to the sword and effectively wiped out this part of the First Crusade. It would be easy to think of the 11th century, and in particular the Crusades, as a time of unjustifiable violence, but it must be said the chroniclers are almost universally as disgusted by these scenes as you or I may be today. However, it was important to highlight the atrocities, again, inflicted cruelly and needlessly on Jewish communities. So after a long and arduous journey, which had come at a terrible price, the crusade eventually found itself at Constantinople. Here they certainly left an impression on Alexius, the emperor, as well as his daughter Anna. Anna gives a thorough description of Bohemond of Taranto. She describes the crusade leader as powerful and intimidating. He towered over even the tallest of the Byzantines. He was broad in both the chest and his shoulders, with muscular arms. His brown hair was cut brutally short, and his face was clean-shaven when Anna encountered him, although she states she believed his beard would look reddish when it was fully grown. This stands in contrast to many of the other crusaders, who were much more wild-looking, according to Anna. It was not unusual to see them with long hair and beards. Although Anna was intrigued by Bohemond's strong and masculine appearance, she, like her father, did not trust him as far as she could throw him. According to her, Bohemond inspired fear in all those around him. Supposedly, even his laughter sent ripples of anxiety to those near enough to hear it. As more and more soldiers arrived, Alexius would have had serious misgivings about these huge number of arrivals into his empire, and he ensured that Bohemond and the Crusaders were lodged safely outside his capital at Constantinople. Any provisions they required were taken to them by the citizens of the imperial city, and only small groups of them were permitted entry at any one time, perhaps to pray in one of the Byzantine churches. When they were allowed entry into Constantinople, it certainly left a lasting impression on the Crusaders. They marvelled at the astonishing wealth of the city, from the wonderful palaces and churches to the merchants' goods containing gold, silver, and many different types of clothing. It is perhaps not surprising Alexius treated the Westerners with distrust. If he allowed large numbers to enter the city, greed may have got the better of them. However, any tensions between Alexius and the leaders of the Crusade eased a little when a meeting was held. Bohemond, Godfrey of Bouillon, and other leading figures swore loyalty to Alexius, although Raymond of Toulouse refused. It suited both sides to come to this agreement. Without Alexius's support, the Crusaders' progress was likely to be extremely limited, and for Alexius himself, he had rather brought on this problem himself by asking for the Crusade in the first place. He had been left flabbergasted at the size of the army, and he needed to move them on quickly. Later Crusades would show that these ventures could easily go wrong, and on one occasion in the early 13th century, Constantinople itself would be sacked. He provided the Crusaders with money, horses, and anything they required for their journey ahead. Hello everybody, thank you for watching my video. I thought I'd just end this video just with a bit of information. This is the first of my Crusade series. There's going to be 3 episodes on the First Crusade. So episode 2 is going to be on the Crusade itself, and episode 3 is going to be looking at the immediate aftermath. But then after that, it's going to continue on looking at the later Crusades. So obviously the 2nd, 3rd, and so on. So this is going to be quite a long series. It's also going to look at the other different types of Crusades, like the Albigensian Crusade and the Northern Crusades. So there's going to be a lot of this content going on to my channel over the next few months, really. I am going to continue to do other stuff as well, but my next couple of videos are going to be up in the next couple of days on the Crusades. So keep an eye out for that, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video.